Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Have you ever gone out with your camera and you've beheld something beautiful, just an amazing scene, and you just couldn't find the shot? You could see the beauty, but you just couldn't see the image. You're definitely not alone when it comes to that, that's for sure. In the video today, I want to take you out with me for some epic conditions, fresh snow, mountains, forest scenery, and what I want to do is break down a bit of my compositional workflow, the process of finding that subject and framing it up. At the end of the video, we're going to come back to the computer, go through some of the raw files, and I want to break down and explain why I would keep some images and why I wouldn't keep others. And again, looking at composition and how to find that image in sometimes what can be quite challenging conditions, especially when it comes to things like trees and forests. Let's go get in the field and then we'll come back to the computer. One thing that definitely happens on these types of days is there's the squalls that come through. You can lose visibility and think it's all over, but if you wait a few minutes, it all comes back again. Like this range here wasn't there. This peak is just starting to come back. It's been gone for the last few minutes. It's just so beautiful, and you can just watch and observe and see it change. One of the challenges I've always found here in Fieldland, it's so beautiful to see the snow on the ferns. It's because it's such an unusual combination. If there's not enough snow though, I find it can be very distracting having the green and the white. It's just a lot going on. Thankfully this morning so far, there's a pretty good coverage here where there's more snow than there is fern, and I think that works. So I'm going to consider using maybe this guy in the foreground. Look at the light up there now. So I've got that light coming through. So utilizing the snow-covered ferns in the foreground, hopefully. I've got the 12 to 24 on. That's going to allow me to get that whole range in back there. Oh, look at the light. All right, let's get into it. So just framing this up, and I think the vertical works better. Primarily the background now with the vertical definitely works well. It's so much symmetry back there of that valley. You've got the two peaks either side, and framing up the ferns in the front here. This gives you an idea of that vertical perspective. It's got to have somewhere for the eye to flow and finish to. So now we're shooting the whole range and got a big depth of field. So just closing down that f-stop for this image. f16 at about 20th of a second, ISO 100. Oh, that is just so nice. Loving the tonality in the sky. It's not just all white. There's warm hues up there. Got the light on the background. Woo-wee! Whenever I see something good as a main subject, I stop looking at that and then start scanning the whole environment, finding a way to piece it all together. I really love to add multiple layers of detail to create a sense of depth and framing. Love that background there. Not much going on here. Here's the good stuff. Now that's just backed right up into the forest there, but we're going to go in, turn around, see how it looks. The more you do this type of stuff, the easier it gets to pre-visualize potential compositions, particularly using a wide angle. If you're not familiar with doing it though, it can be kind of tricky at first to see the shot. Oh man, there it is. See, when we get down here, we create a sense of depth by getting something close, and then it just leads off into the background. That's the rough frame we're going for. Making sure I've got some nice tight details there in the front. Big stack. That's way better now. So we've got that light from the right. Soft light hitting the mountain there. Woo! Look up the top here too, light in the sky. Ah, oh, that is just glorious. How could you not be absolutely in awe of that? Oh, mate. Gee. It's hard to film. It's hard to shoot, because you just want to be here forever in that moment. Look at that. This is why everyone should try photography and getting outdoors, because that just resets your heart, your mind. Blown away, and it's changing so fast. Those last frames there, that does it for me. You know, when I'm filming these videos, sometimes I'll be shooting things, say that first, Hello. That first composition that we shot when we moved here, you know, that's just all part of the creative process. When I'm filming a video, I'm going to include stuff like that. It's not going to necessarily end up in the portfolio. Probably won't even process it. It's just all part of the creative process for me. Is kind of shooting, reviewing, and just keep moving until you find that one thing where you go, that's the one. No one walks out, first try, bang, that's the shot. If you do, you're selling yourself short. That's why I like to keep moving. Follow the light, the atmosphere, watch and observe. Don't just sit on the one spot for too long, shooting the same thing over and over. So I kept on moving around there for a good 20 minutes or so, and then right at the end, when the light and atmosphere did that, that's the shot. Some really fun stuff to do here is get the beech trees with the long lens while they're covered in snow. The beech trees' leaves are so small that they don't hold the snow very long, and it's such an amazing combination. So I'm just looking up at the hill using the long lens and just trying to pick out the right tree. Easier said than done. It all kind of blends in, so you're just looking for a tree that is quite dominant and jumps out from the rest. These are the days we dream of as photographers. We just had falling snow. Now the light's coming through. It just doesn't stop. Using the long lens now. And one thing I've done in the past with the falling snow is try to accentuate that movement using a slow shutter. Now you're gonna have to experiment with your shutter speed depending on what focal length you're at and how fast the snow's falling, but 30th of a second, 20th can give some nice streaks. If you go fast and try and freeze the snow, that can definitely work, but at the same time, sometimes it can look like noise, like high ISO, because it's so speckly. But it's worth experimenting and just seeing what result you like. But shooting up here on the hill, we've got the snow covering all the silver beech, and it's glowing now with that light. Man, it just doesn't get much better, because now the light's hitting the branches and the moss and giving us some green amongst that, and the trees are just popping. And now the light's going again. It just, wow, what a fairy tale. Keeps changing, keeps it interesting. Such a blessing. All right, so here's the first image that we captured out in the field there. Just, man, in love with these conditions. Now it's a focus stack, as you know. So here's the frames where you can see the progression of the focus beginning in the front there. It's at f13, but this is why I stacked. Even at f13, you can see how blurry that background is. So it's important then to do the focus stack, and now we've got that all the way through. I'm not going to do the blend now. I cover focus stacking in another video. It's more looking at composition today and then roughly how I would process this. I'm not going to do a full start to finish on it. Compositionally though, but before I get to that, actually, let's just balance out the dynamic range. So look at the histogram here. I like to use that as a reference, especially when it comes to highlights and understanding, you know, can I go brighter? How dark am I, you know, in these shadows? That histogram gives a perfect reference. So what I would do is brighten up this file, say about there. Then I'd pull down the highlights for that top portion. Shadows could come up a touch. And then one of the main things I'd probably do is darken that top part of the sky. So I use an adjustment brush, I've pushed K, and I'll just bring the exposure down and dehaze slightly, which is just going to, and I'm using the edge of the brush here with a high feather, so it's nice and gentle, and I'm just going to bring that in. You could use a grad filter if you want to, just pick your poison, doesn't really matter either way. And then another approach I would also do on this file is cooling it down a little bit to really press into that cold winter vibe, so I do that globally here. Also the profile, chucking it on landscape, that's instantly just giving the colours a bit more punch. And the grading would play a huge part. So going into the colour grading, again I cover this on another video, but warming those beautiful highlights back there. like so. And then I could cool those shadows down a touch to give us that nice cool and warm contrast. That's what was so magical about this moment. Also with a brush, just for that background area, potentially bringing up some exposure and whites. And again, the histogram will be my reference here if I'm going too bright, which I'm definitely not. Making sure the brightest part of the image is in the background. So let's talk about the composition. There's a before and after, by the way, but you get the idea where we're taking it. But nature did all the work for us, which is the goal ultimately. Compositionally, this is a very common thing I'll do. I like to place that main subject matter in what I call the centralized zone, just being in the background away from the edges. So within that inner square, if you use the rule of thirds for argument's sake, just getting that main subject matter back there, and that's hopefully where you have the predominant light as well, because the eye will flow from darkness to light. So we've got our main subject matter, this beautiful mountain in the back, and then that's where the light is. In the front here, we're using near and far details. We're getting a sense of depth because we do have those details up close. So instantly the viewer will feel like they're standing right there because they have details close that they can take in and observe. There's a strong balance going on because I've got the ferns here on the right and these ones on the left. What that has done is created a bit of an opening through the middle, and that opening is symmetrical or balancing out where the main subject is. It's allowing the eye to flow through to that background area. We also have a leading line coming down here from the top left straight to the main subject, and even a subtle one here on the right. That also balances out this ridge on the left. So lots of balance going on. That's one of the main things I look for. Establish the main subject matter and then look for ways to add layers to create depth, but have those balancing out the overall frame. All right, the trees. I want to show you guys this because people often ask about, well, how do you know which is the frame? Especially when you've got a lot of images there to sort through. Typically in landscape photography, that doesn't happen too much, but you get these moments where it's a bit like wildlife, where there's so many subjects there to shoot and different changing conditions. I want to quickly show you my selection process and why I would pick a certain image over others and then potentially delete the rest, really the ones that I'm not using, just to clear up the hard drive space. What I'm looking for, again, like that last image, is first of all, what is the main subject? Let's make it quite clear, where is the eye flowing? That, for example, has a very clear main subject, right? That big, beautiful tree in the front. When we look at this little series here, main subject there as well, right in the front, a little bit tighter there, a little bit of breathing space. This is all subjective. I'd probably go for that one if I was going to process it. It's very clear and it's balanced out. See the V formation in that tree? That's the balance again, right? Let's scroll through and have a look at some. One of the problems with this one, and I really like this tree here, look where it's all centralized. I don't like the imbalance of this opening there. So if I do process this, that's something that I would have to address. But I really like the balance in this frame because we've got all, see the tree is just weighted evenly either side. Predominant trunks in the middle, balanced out. We've just got that portion up in the top left. So that's one consideration there. When I am looking at these files, I personally, so I'm just using Adobe Bridge here, that's how I view my files. I'll just give that a rating. I'll just go 5-star, and that way it throws it to the bottom of my list. So then once I've ran through everything, I've got the short list down the bottom. These ones here, I was really loving the balance left and right. Trees, there's a bit of an opening through the middle, and then that interesting one up the top. But this is a good example of where is the main subject? Where is the eye meant to be going? And what can happen to us in the field is we get so fixated on something. So you can see where I've zoomed in there. I was fixated on that tree. I really like that. And this branch on the right. This perspective here, you know, my eye might have been looking at that and thinking all these were adding depth to the scene. But in reality, now that I'm looking at it back home, it's just too far away. If someone looks at that, yeah, okay, it's nice. There's nice trees and textures, but where are we finishing up? That's the big question. Where is the eye going? That pulls in tighter now. And it's a bit more obvious. Okay, we're looking at these trees right here in the middle. I don't like that sky though in these ones. So looking at that little series that I shot there, they're all somewhat similar, slightly tweaking composition. I'm not feeling it now. And that's totally fine. I like shooting like that where you're not overly thinking in the field. You're just running off a bit of intuition and just firing away. And the handheld really allows for that, especially in these changing conditions. So let's look at a couple more examples. Here's some strong balance where we've got the two trees either side, that falling snow, which I really like trying to incorporate that. That's that shutter speed we're talking about. So that's a 15th of a second. I don't mind that. But again, it's a little bit of a question of where are we really finishing up? This is where it gets a bit more clear though. Look at this big tree, and that is very obvious, the main subject, and the eye is going to flow to that. Now, as I run through, there was a big changing in conditions. And as you're sorting through your files, you start to just know straight away, all right, which is the one. And I would work at a pretty fast pace like this. Moving along, it's cool light coming in there, but again, where's the eye going? That's not a bad tree in the front, but I think too much falling snow now. Let's have a look. This is what I mean about the falling snow. It can look like high ISO, lots of noise. Particularly if people are viewing this just on a phone or something, unfortunately, you're just not really going to see those details there. This is looking a bit cleaner now. So we don't have the falling snow in these frames, but I really like the fact that we've got the nice, big, obvious subject matter, evenly balanced out. So I'd maybe look at using one like that, and you can see just a little bit of brightening and color adjustments there are going to really bring these to life. The falling snow. There's our main guy again. So that's roughly the selection process. Even this one, okay, the eye does flow to that tree. That's why I was shooting it, that tree right there. So this is where you can still incorporate other areas there for the balance and the depth. But as long as the eye still ends up flowing towards that point, and generally, as I've said a few times, that for me is not going to be off the edge of the frame. It's going to be the centralized zone, and then trying to balance it out. And this little series here I wanted to show you. So this is going back to that trident looking tree that was in some of the earlier frames back here. There it is there, off to the side. But the conditions are a lot crisper now, and it's very obvious where the eye is flowing. So then it would just be a matter of running through and finding which one is the right frame where it's all balanced out. And probably that one with a very slight crop coming in from the right, potentially. Because now you've got the three. This one, and this one. That's kind of what my brain's seeing anyway. I'd pull that into about there. Look at the light, huh? Wow, just crazy. And then it would just be a matter of finding that right balance, maybe a high contrast. You almost can't go wrong with these. There's just so many different directions. And I'm not really going to try and process it today. Even going for a less contrast like that, more of a mid-tone, bring the whites up a little bit. Could play adding some greens, cooling it down. Oh man, yeah, I'm liking that. Why don't we change the profile? Nice. I'm going to push done, so that actually applies that edit for me. And maybe that one I'll shortlist now. Throw that in. So I did shortlist a couple earlier on. So what else do we have? We've got that one, but then I've got these two here as well. That guy and that one. Similar thing. Look at the balance there. Apply the color. Bring the shadows up a little bit, maybe cool it down. Wow. This one, maybe I'll darken the edges to really make sure the eye finishes on that tree. So with the brush, just like a vignette really, but I'm just going to gently do it manually. Just dialing that around like so. And it's good to have directional light, a reference for where that's coming in. So bringing the exposure up, bit of rehazing, and just add that gentle side light coming in, which is obviously hitting the tree. Man, what a moment when the light hits those mosses like that with the snow, and you don't get long. Those leaves can barely support the snow. Before, after. Push done on that one. And the last one that we shortlisted down there, yeah, this one here. Similar thing. Big dominant main subject balanced out in the frame. So I've got a few more to run through and just take my time and really figure out which are the ones. The last thing I want to do is have a multitude of similar images because I feel like they lose their impact then. But I wanted to share the video with you now, and then eventually I'll get around to processing these completely. Well, thank you so much for checking out the video, guys. As always, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. I'll always get back to you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.